How do I quit my 9 to 5 and start an online business? This is a question that I get asked multiple times a week by people in my audience. And I've got a fun one for you today. This is an interview with one of my students that I've been working with for 9 months now. And in those 9 months, Felipe has gone from working a 9 to 5 and hating what he was doing to now he is selling a 10 to 15K offer, which is absolutely insane. He is living the life currently. He moved from New York to Brazil. He has had an awesome journey and transformation. And this should answer your question about how you can do this. Shout out to also one of my other students, Dan, who just gave me this as a gift. I just went and had brunch with him. So super excited to be able to give you this story with one of my other clients. And I hope this answers your question of how to do it. See you in there. Felipe, bro, welcome. This has been a long time coming. And to give you a little bit of context, we have been working together now since I think it was like July, August time. Is that about correct?
Yeah, that's about right. I think maybe, yeah, July, August, you're right. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So today I kind of wanted to do a fun, little conversation because you have been on an incredible journey. And you are one of the rare people that have made that the Valhalla leap from being a 9 to 5er, having a job, to being a full-time entrepreneur where you are running your own business, you're building a team, you've got some massive goals, and you've done that in, I guess, about kind of 6, 7, 8 months since we started working together. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would kind of be cool today if we kind of, because I'm the same. I did that leap a few years ago. And I thought it'd be cool to kind of just tell people about, really show behind the curtains what it's taken for you to make that transition. You're doing some really cool things. So Felipe has an amazing YouTube channel. We'll kind of talk a little bit about that, about how he's documenting his journey. But yeah, I think Felipe, man, it's been a pleasure working with you for the last, 9 months or so. And dude, welcome. Would you mind giving a little bit of kind of a short background of what you were doing when we started working together? And then we'll walk people through the journey to where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. First off, thanks for bringing me on to talk about all this. I feel honored, especially on your birthday. Very special.
Thanks, man.
But yeah, pretty much. I came across you and we met virtually, obviously, still waiting on that in-person meetup. Around July, I think. And it was when I was I have always had an entrepreneurial mind. Always wanted to, in my mind, at the end of the day, be a business owner and have control of my destiny, quote unquote. I've always wanted that. And so I was working in corporate America, I guess you could call it, in digital media. And I was doing cool stuff. I would say, a lot of people were envious of my position. Oh, working in sports media and getting to travel and talk about sports and stuff like that. But the problem was that I wasn't being challenged. And I always felt myself in these corporate settings, eventually getting to a point where I wasn't being challenged, and because of that wasn't being fulfilled, and felt like I didn't have a purpose because I could just walk in and it was really easy. And I'm the kind of person that gets bored really easily if I'm not being challenged. And so I got bored. I got really bored, and I was bored every day of work. And it wasn't I wasn't in a situation where I was dreading going to work every Sunday. I was fine going to work, but it wasn't fun. It wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't purposeful. And so I knew I wanted to make that jump, and that's when jump into entrepreneurship. And that's when I started to just kind of do research. What are different ways that I can go into, bro? I'm talking about from looking at vending machine businesses. I was can I start a vending machine business? How can I make this thing happen? Because for me, I was working in content and I love content, but I didn't like how like dull and monotonous the kind of corporate lifestyle was, and that I couldn't control my growth. It wasn't up to me. I could perform very well, but it would be like it's capped growth and everything like that. So I've always wanted something where it's like the hard work that I put in, I can see direct results out of. And so I looked at all these different business endeavors and all these different ways I could get started. And ultimately, I figured out like the best way to go about it is just find the skills that you have. What are you good at? What are you better than other people at? And how can you monetize it? How can you monetize your knowledge and your experience and your skill set? And that led me to the creator economy side of things, which I was very excited about as soon as I figured that out. And I think from there, it was just a matter of building and learning, because that's one thing that I've learned in this journey is that you always think you're one step away, but in reality, you're 500 steps away. But as long as you have that mentality that like, you can't get down about that. Like you figure out one thing that leads you to the next and keep going. And that's what led me on this overall journey to where I'm at right now. And that's kind of like a bigger background, I guess. I know we'll dive into it deeper as you ask more, but yeah, that's kind of like the background and what caused me to make the jump.
Awesome, man. Cool. Because look, we'll kind of go into the specifics, because you had a very specific skill set that I believe like I kind of if I think about my journey, I also developed a similar skill set, which was content creation, like videography, and I taught myself those skills, but not really at a professional level, which you were at. But like, tell people kind of like, when we talk about, people are like, okay, how do I do this journey, do this jump? And I had the same thing with you. It was like, shit, like, what do I do? And I decided, because I worked when I worked in tech, I was working with e-commerce brands, and I saw e-commerce and I saw people popping up with brands, I guess, like the concept of like building your own store or building your own brand. So that was what I did. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I guess, yeah, you had the similar situation with like vending machines. You were like, what do I do? Like, what is my route out here?
Yeah.
But what you ended up doing was you were like, you had some skills, and then you were like, well, how do I morph these skills into something that I can package and sell, right? Like that's ultimately where you're at now. So do you mind talking a bit about like what were those skills? What were you doing that and not that gave you a head start, but like meant that you were prepared? Because I look at like what you've brought to the creator economy. You already had some skills. Are you cool talking about some of those skills that you already had?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mentioned I was in digital media and content, but specifically I was creating a lot of content and within podcasts. So we tried what at work when I was there. We tried a bunch of different types of content, worked with influencers, all this kind of stuff. So I was able to see what worked and what didn't. And especially in the short form content era that we're in, and that really started in like 2019. TikTok really started blowing up, and then during the COVID days it spiked. So we were able to see just what was working, and from there kind of decipher between just like bad content and good content. And that led us to, while I was at the job, to create a podcast, Caps Off podcast, which actually they just got bought by another company, better, and they're continuing that. But we were able to scale that podcast to 200,000 followers in only a year. So we grew the following super, super quickly. And I was just getting bombarded by a bunch of people. You guys are having so much success. How are you guys doing it? This and that. And what I realized is that you think it's easy when you're doing it, but what you realize is that it's not. And a lot of people are wanting to do that. But naturally, I had gained so many skills in terms of just like learning what's good content, what's bad content, and all that kind of stuff, what works and what doesn't, over the years of us trying a bunch of different stuff, that when we finally tried Caps Off, it worked almost as if like an overnight success. And but it wasn't that. We had just failed with a bunch of other types of content. And so I knew that my eye for good content really was something that I could monetize. The podcast industry continuing to grow. Everybody is all the time is wanting to start a podcast, and like whether it's a celebrity, athlete, anybody that's big that doesn't have a podcast, all of a sudden you see their new podcast out. Like everyone wants to have a podcast. It gives you authority. It makes you seem cool, like all this kind of stuff. You can interview people. And so I knew that the industry was growing, and then just a little bit of research told me where it's going to be in 2030, the podcast industry, like from, I think, 23 billion going up to like 130 billion, like an insane growth trajectory. And so anytime you're looking into what business to go into, they tell you to do a little bit of research, and that was pretty easy to do with the podcast industry. And then just kind of morphing those skills for short form content, for like podcast creation and growth, and finding how I could bring that to the market. And that has been, I would say, like the majority of the journey is figuring out like not only what can I bring, but how can I create a message around it in a way that actually resonates with people. And then that brings up a whole bunch of different challenges, kind of like what I was talking about earlier. You think you're a step away, but you solve one problem and it brings up 20 other problems. But that's my journey. Wow, the little thumbs up on the camera, that throws me off every time. But yeah, so that's been my journey, and like that's what made me realize like I can definitely monetize this and bring this to the kind of like creator economy, quote unquote, and see, how I can go about it.
Awesome, man. And would you say you're kind of now at a stage, because I definitely feel this, and I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, but like I feel finally, after having a load of jobs, trying loads of stuff out, doing a load of stuff, I finally feel like I've found something that I can really kind of like sink my teeth into, like really, really kind of like, okay, I can see where this can be. And like you said, you did the market research, but 5 years time, 10 years time, whatever. I kind of had this, I went for a walk yesterday and had this realization. I was like, everyone talks about people don't realize that success is just not quitting, and not quitting is just staying with something long enough. And in this world where there's so many like shiny objects to potentially go and try out and move towards, it's really clear. It's like, how do you stick with something long enough? I think I came up with the solution. And I have forgot about this. I forgot I came up with this, but like, so this is the first time I've even talked about this, but like, I am going to retrospectively look back to when I like incorporated my company last year, and I'm gonna like look into the future and say, okay, what is the date in 10 years from that day? And I'm gonna set this publicly. I am not allowed to quit this business until that date, until that day. That is when I get to decide if I want to continue on this business or not. And
Love that.
yeah, it's like because I feel like I finally found that thing where it's like, you know what, like, yeah, I get bored as well. So something similar that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, how do we build constraints around us to be like, okay, well, how do we not make it boring? And I think it's this process of always trying to improve your experience, improve things, but also just stay in the game and not just like give up. How do you feel like, do you feel like you have a medium-term, long-term vision at all with the business?
100%. Absolutely. It's actually funny. I just wrote that down because I think that's genius. I think just the concept business, what I've learned is that as long as you can create like a concept around something, it just makes it a lot easier to visualize, and it makes it more concrete. When things are in the air, that's when you can get overwhelmed and you don't really know how things are going to turn out. But for me, it's a long-term vision for sure, because like I said, like when I was in working a 9 to 5 and doing all that, like I just knew that's not where I wanted to be. And that feeling is, you feel desperate sometimes because you're just like, dude, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And you talk to people and friends, and I have good friends still that hate their jobs and go to work every single day. And regardless of like where they work, like I had one roommate that I had actually, and every single day he's like, all right, another day at work, another day closer to retirement. I'm like, bro, you got 40 more years. Like, what do you mean another day closer to retirement? Like, you're right. But like, so for me, it's the only way you win in this game is by having a long-term vision. Because at the end of the day, like I said, like you might think you have the answer and it might be tomorrow that you're going to win, but whenever you figure something out, more problems arise. So if you have a short term, if you're only looking at it from like a short term window and not having kind of like a longer term thing going on, then when you don't make something, like when you don't reach a goal or when you fall short, you're going to feel like you failed, and that might cause you to quit. So for me, I have a long-term approach when it comes to this. Like for me, entrepreneurship is forever. I love the idea of what you talked about of like 2034, this business that I started now, in 10 years, if it's not like, oh, I can only quit in 10 years because there's no way you're going to fail if you're getting 1% better every single day. But come on, there's absolutely no way you're gonna fail. So I think that's super important. And Alex Hormozy talks about this. I mean, his podcast is called The Game, but it's because like business ultimately is a game, and the only way to fail is by quitting. And so I think it's that's the mindset you have to have if you want to have success.
Nice, man. Yeah, look, I've had this realization as well recently, around kind of goal setting and really trying to take the pressure off myself. And I'm now like super happy that I have a very clear idea of where I want to get to in the kind of like medium term, 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how fast it's going to take me or how long it's going to take. But what I realized is that I am now living my dream life that you mentioned it. I was desperate,
Yeah.
so desperate for when I was having to commute 2-3 hours per day, stuck on a train that was like packed in with people, standing in the rain on like station platforms, going into offices with all these fucking lights and making small talk with people who frankly you didn't have anything in common with. And like I realized this actually, it's only this year that I realized I am living the dream. And I'm so grateful for that. And it's taken the pressure off. I'm like, hey, we're good now. Like we're good. I'm literally living the dream that I was so desperate for. Everything is now just a bonus. Um, you, however, you kind of had a pretty cool, like a super cool story. You went from having your 9 to 5 in New York. Do you want to tell the kind of the story about the how did you go from like what did you do whilst you were at your 9 to 5? I know what you did, but like what did you do to make that jump? Like you still had a full-time job. Like
Yeah.
and it's not like you had a gap. You went straight into what did you do to make that leap happen?
Yeah. It's funny because I was talking to someone else about this last week, and they were like, "Yo, when you know it's right to make that jump, like, do you not get nervous about it or whatever?" But like to me, it was the only option. Like I think it was really like it sounds weird, and it's like I don't say this to seem like I'm bragging or like being cocky about it or whatever, but it was easy because I just couldn't see myself doing that shit that I was doing for any longer. Like I was so tired of it, and I just kept picturing, what if I could wake up and just build toward my dream? And that dream could be a 10-year dream, but like, what if I could just wake up and focus on that and build towards that every single day? And you have to have discipline for that, obviously, because you could just quit your job and like if you don't have discipline, then you're just gonna find yourself watching Netflix all day. But for me, it was like I was waking up at 5 in the morning so I could get in 3 hours of work before I had to go into my job, and then working when I got home until like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. just to try to do this shit. And it would be hard, but but I loved it. And so I figured if I could do that every single day, like it would be awesome and living the dream, as you say. And so for me, like making the jump was just a matter of honestly just being super tired of living that monotonous, like kind of boring life that I was doing in the 9 to 5, and thinking about how much further I could take my business if I dedicated my full time and energy towards it. And that was the biggest thing, because it's like, yeah, I could keep doing this as a side thing for a while. Like I could, like this could be something that I just keep doing like the on weekends and outside of work, but that would just take longer. And if I could focus all my time into something and build right now, then I could speed up the process tremendously and actually make big leaps. Like, you know, 6 months would be equivalent to what like 3 years would be if I was just doing this on the side, really. So that was the thought with leaving the job. And I did whatever I could to make that happen. So I think a lot of people are scared financially, and that's very legitimate. For me, I was like, how can I just cut all my costs? Like, how can I figure this shit out? Because I want to leave. Like, I like, fuck this shit. I'm gone. And so I knew that my grandparents have a ranch in Brazil, and I was living at New York City at the time, which obviously super expensive. And I'm like, okay, how can I make this happen? And there's this ranch that my grandpa has. My family doesn't really stay at it. And I'm like, okay, I can go there. Like, is it the most ideal? Am I going to be able to like party on the weekends and stuff like that? No, but that's not an area in my life where I'm not in the phase of my life right now where I'm focused on that. Like, I'm focused on building. So it's almost like sacrifice some things to be able to make other things happen. And I think that's something that everybody can do to some extent. Everybody can find ways to cut costs. Everybody can find ways to sacrifice one thing to make room for another. And I figured out everything I could to make that happen. I was actually on the way to the gym and I had the thought, I had the idea. I heard somebody talking about my 30,000 a year job was keeping me from making 30,000 a month. And I was like, that's real. And so I was like, how can I apply that to myself? And just on the way back from the gym, I was like, I need to talk to my girlfriend, talk to her that night. She was like, that sounds crazy. Next day, she was like, you know what? It sounds pretty cool. Let's do it. And I think it took a couple weeks for me to talk to my family, and then I made the jump. But that was the overall like thought process.
Dude, I remember when I got that text from you, because yeah, I had been working with you for probably a few months, like 3, 4 months, and we would meet, I think like once every 2 weeks, maybe even once every week, and it would always be like 7 a.m. your time. So you
Yeah.
would jump on with me on a call before you'd go to work. You'd always have a big late, your big coffee, your big iced coffee, ready to go. And yeah, it was like you showed up and you put in the work like as best as you could consistently for long enough. And that is what gave you the like it gave you the option, because what you did is like the work that you were doing was, okay, how do I craft, like what is my offer going to look like? How can I
Hmm.
help people? What is
Yep.
like what is something that I can get paid like 3K, 5K, whatever, what could that look like? And
Right.
then the work that you did working your 9 to 5, you did that work to the point where you then sold like your service, and you had enough proof, you had proof, you have evidence that there was some sort of demand, and you then were able to like be like, okay, you know what, that's enough. And then how do I mitigate my risk? And you were like, you tapped into what I believe is the key fundamental like character trait of a successful entrepreneur, which is resourcefulness. Like you asked the question, like, how? Like, how the fuck do I make this happen? And it is only when you like when you have nothing and you have no options that you're like you create options out of thin air and you move
Yep.
things around to make things happen. And similar thing happened to me, like I locked myself in my bedroom for during the entirety of COVID. So my housemates, my roommates would just get smashed every single night. And I literally locked the door so that they wouldn't come and bother me. And I learned how to make Facebook ads. I learned how to do social media marketing. I taught myself all these skills. Um, and eventually that was what gave me the kind of like the skill set to be able to actually unlock the door and jump into like full-time entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Um, but like, yeah, dude, you made that happen because of resourcefulness.
Yep.
And would you mind like telling people about kind of, because we work together in a kind of a mentorship coaching capacity. You have other mentors, you have other people that you work with. Can you talk a little bit about, for me, when I've invested in mentors before, I've had to like take second jobs to be able to do it, like to be able to afford it, to make it happen. And that to me is resourcefulness.
Yeah.
There are so many people that they're like, I don't have the money, so therefore I can't like learn, I can't get the skills. And Hormozy talks about this being the like the when then fallacy. They're like, hey, I will learn the skills to make money once I've made enough money. It's like, that's no, that is the opposite. And I always use the
Yeah.
example of like all self-made millionaires and billionaires, everyone started with zero if they were self-made, right?
Mhm.
So they
Right.
didn't just get given money, they didn't get given, they had to figure out a way to be resourceful, to accumulate skills. And whether that was working for free for people, whether that was taking loans from people, whether that was putting stuff on credit cards, whether that was whatever, like they fucking figured it out. And I think a lot of people, it's such an anti kind of philosophy because it's just not the way of like the 9 to 5 life. You have to flip it. Like, what has that been like for you, kind of investing in your skills and education? And what would you say to someone who is maybe on the fence about that?
Yeah, right, right. I mean, I think you bring up such good points. Now, I love this topic because I think it goes more like it's like more psychological. If you're, I think if you're afraid to, like, you can come up with every excuse, right? Like money and everything like that. But at the end of the day, I think if you're not going to pull the trigger, you really don't want it. Like, you really don't want it because again, like you can figure out ways to make it happen. So whether it's again, yeah, like putting on a credit card and figuring out how you're gonna have to pay that off, or whatever it literally whatever it is. Like my first thought, tying it back to my situation was just like, how can I make that happen? Because I know living in New York, that's impossible. So it's literally impossible. And I know that a lot of people they don't have that, they don't tap into the resourcefulness of the situation. And so they just say that's not possible. Like unless I get like a 2 times raise on my salary and stuff like that, they think so like linear, but there's so many other options out there that you could actually take advantage of. And if you say, and I think a lot of people like if you bring up those options to them, they say, yeah, but I don't want that. And so I just don't think you really want what you say you want bad enough because you can make it happen. But if somebody's on the fence, I mean, I just think in terms of like mentorship or just investing in yourself and your skills and improving yourself so you could actually get an ROI. If somebody's on the fence about that, then I just don't think that what I would say is that there's no better investment than investing in yourself. Another Hormozy thing that I learned that I listened to when I was in my 9 to 5 all the time, and just listening to these different podcasts and stuff like that. I love what he said about like forget the S&P 500, worry about the S and me. Like invest in yourself because that's going to get you way better returns. And that's the thing. You're going to get if you're on the fence about investing in something because it's going to get you returns. Like if you invest in it and you actually go all into it, then you're going to get the returns. Like there's especially if you're investing in a situation that you've seen other people have returns, and just get back what they put in. So it's just a matter of how bad do you really want it? And if you're not able to make that jump, don't think you're, if you don't make the jump, I just don't think you want it bad enough, right? Because you're going to make it, you're going to be able to make it happen. And so I just think that that's really what it comes down to for a lot of people. But if you are on that fence, then just know that you can, you're going to get an ROI out of it. Like investing in yourself is the best investment period. And that's what I've experienced myself working with you. That was one of the first, I think it was the first investment. I'm trying to think back now because I've invested in a few things, but like, well, no, yeah, I invested like in a digital program or something like a course before that, which was like $500. Um, and I have my own thoughts about like courses and stuff, but investing in you was like in our mentor in the mentorship there. And first it was group coaching that I invested in, and it was one-on-one. So like you work your way up too if it's something that you need to do. But the closer you work with somebody that's ahead of you, the further you'll get and the quicker you'll get. So for me, it's been awesome experiences working with mentors, working within programs that also not only give you like insight, but give you resources that you can use to grow, and you just get out of it what you put in.
Yeah, man. So today, and I mean, who knows when whoever's watching this is watching this, but today Hormozy posted what I think is one of the, I've been talking about this guy on my channel for like fucking 3 years now, but he hits home runs like all the time. And today he posted a video, which was honestly like, if only every single like person who wants to be an entrepreneur could watch this video, because it's the true mindset to winning. So he kind of talked about this idea that like there are like five like kind of like types of people that when they enter education, like they have five different kind of mind frames that they go into it. And I haven't done my kind of like notes on this yet because because I think it's so important to get this message out there. But the reason I say this is because the number one person is the person who comes into an education kind of program or environment and is like, I am going to win at all costs.
Yeah.
And I am going to become the best student. I'm going to get the best results and I'm going to win because I just will make this win. And it's like, it's funny because I think a lot of people come into programs and stuff and they have these frames where it's like, I'm going to see if this works for me.
Yeah.
Whereas when we first worked together, I got all of my students to fill out an onboarding form. And I remember talking about this publicly in one of our first workshop sessions. Like because I could see how every single person had filled in this form, which was like goals, things they're struggling with, aspirations. And the way you specifically had filled it in was completely different to how everyone else had filled it in. It was extremely thoughtful. It was extremely detailed. And like now knowing this, like thinking about, and I knew this at the time, I was like, I said it publicly. I was like, guys, like, and I remembered asking you, I was like, dude, are you cool if I use this as an example of, and it is just proof to show that like, yeah, you know, you can come into something and you can come into it with the mind frame of, I'm going to see if this works. And you're going to lose. Like that is, you're just going to lose because that is unfortunately, it's a loser's perspective. Whereas you came in and when we've worked together, you've just come in and you've just been like, what do I need to do? Like, just tell me what I need to do. And you just do it. And it is this like, yeah, it was really cool for me because I was like sick. This is the type of person that I want to be around. I want to be around people who are like I will make this work no matter what. I will do this stuff. I'll do the boring stuff. I'll do the boring work. I'll get this done. And you did that. And yeah, here we are now. And you've done it. What are your thoughts when it comes to just like having an attitude of like, I am going to win?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to have that. Like going into a situation thinking, I hope it works out. Like naturally you're going into it without it, like you said, it's not the proper attitude just because if something you're going to encounter adversity always. And so what if this works for me is almost a mindset of like, okay, as soon as something goes the wrong way, I know it's not for me. And then you're going to fail. And that means everybody that has that mindset is going to fail and they probably will. And on the other hand, I'm having the mindset of I'm going to make this work. When you face adversity, you know that that's just like a bump in the road. And ultimately might not even be a bump. It might just be something that is correcting you to go in a better direction. And that's what I've found really in my journey through all of this. But I think that the mentality you have to have is just knowing that you're going to make it work in whatever it may be. And so if you're not getting the results that you think that you deserve, maybe you don't deserve it yet. Like you need to put in more work or you need to figure something out. Like you just have to kind of keep at it. And I think anything that you invest in, you can get something out of. Like it's up to you. And a lot of people with like a victim mindset will think that I think that's part of the problem with like the scams and all that. I do think that there are some probably legitimate like courses and stuff out there that scam people, I'm sure. But I think that it's become like a big thing. Like I don't want to call it like an epidemic, but obviously it's like a big reason why people don't trust, like these people in the industry or whatever it may be. But I think that a big problem, like a big part of that problem are the consumers that are buying this because they're not going into, they think that like just by paying for a program, no matter how much they pay, that's just going to solve all their problems, when it's like you still have to put in the work. And the program isn't going through the issue, like the problems and the road bumps that you're going to have to go through. Like it's not going to solve that. It'll help you get there quicker if you follow it, but you're still going to have to go through it. So I think a lot of people think that it's just like a magic pill, and that you
Yeah.
can just buy your way out of struggle, but that's not the case. So if you accept the fact that what you invest in is, you're going to get results out of it, and you're going to make sure that you get results out of it, so you squeeze all the juice out of this thing, then any roadblocks that happen, like, they're not going to slow you down, and you're still going to be able to accomplish what you want. So I think that, like, you just need that mentality. Like, I mean, I think it's everything, and it's the reason that I've been able to get wins out of different programs, and I've invested in different things that maybe I didn't get. I always have big goals. So it's like, if I do a, a if I started a program that it's like, I'm going to increase my vertical jump by like 10 inches, then I'm going to expect to get to my 10-inch vertical by the end, but maybe I'm not there by the end of the goal, or by when I set it. But if I'm on like the journey, if I'm on the path and I know that, like, all right, I can still get there, then I'm going to work until I get there. And I know that I'm not going to stop until I do. Again, going back to like what we said before, you don't lose. The only way you will lose is by quitting. And I'm big into music too, and I love 50 Cent. And one of my favorite albums ever is Get Rich or Die Trying. And I've always had that mentality too. It's like, bro, like, if you die, you die. But like, let's get rich. Let's try to get there. Like, I'm not gonna stop until I die or I get there.
Awesome, man. I remember when we had our first, like, I think we had a call after, when I was like, hey, look, I think I can help you out. And the reason I only went to you out of all the other people that I could have potentially worked with, because I was like, I saw that. I saw the hunger, and I saw that you just needed the next few steps to be able to take you out from, like, okay, where you were to where you wanted to get to. And I was like, I said to you, I remember plotting on this like graph on Canva. It was like, dude,
Yeah.
I see you as $1 million per month kind of guy. Like, that is what I see in you. And I don't think I've said that to anyone else before, because it takes a very specific type of person to want that, and to want to get there, and to have the hunger and the drive to do that. And you absolutely, like, are one of those people. And I'm super excited to see you go on that journey. Do you want to kind of like give a little bit of a kind of, because what happened was, when on the transition from being a 9 to 5er to going full time, you always have to go through this period where you basically have to say yes to everything. And it's like, I'm just going to say yes to this because it takes me one step closer to figuring out what works. Like, and you did that, right? You kind of like, you had some clients, and you have to do these type of like negotiation deals where it's like, you want to get to just a fair, is this fair enough in kind of trade for a referral or a testimonial. And you have to be like kind of flexible with these things. But now you are at the stage where, I'll let you, do you want to talk about kind of what your offer is now, how you're helping people now? And I class it as like you having a very sophisticated offer. How are you kind of like, what's that journey been like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's incredibly important, especially in the beginning. And it's part of being the resourcefulness that we were talking about. But it's like, you got to figure out what you need. So if like, a lot of case studies is going to help your case, is going to help you close more deals. And so how can you get those case studies? And I mean, it's funny. He's literally become like the guy in our industry, because like everything goes back to so much that I've learned from Hormozy from just listening to him. But this is like, he's done a step by step. And if it's not him, like Russell Brunson has done it. Like, all these other people have done it. It's really easy. I think Hormozy just takes all these other ideas and he puts it all together, and then he seems like a genius. But at the end of the day, like, he's talked about this, and all these other people have talked about it. It's like, first, just work for free, get the case studies, get results, get testimonials, and then use that to start charging a little bit more. And actually, at the end of the day, like, you can get to where you want to get to. And I think people want to just get rich immediately, and they go like back to the other thing, like then they think it's a scam if it doesn't work, and that's not the way it works. So for me, I had to put in the work when it comes. Yeah, I took on some like just consulting. I even took on some like done for you where I was doing video edits. Like
Yeah.
I myself was video editing outside of work, and we got great results out of it, which was awesome. But it definitely wasn't the best use of my time at the time. But in terms of like, am I getting the best ROI period? If we were just talking about money, but when you talk about long term, it probably was the best ROI because it allowed me to get the results that would then get me bigger deals down the line and give me the vision of what I can actually offer that's valuable. And so, though, I think that's super important to be able to take those on. And what that's led me to is me being in the content space and offering content services, and specifically around podcasts. It was figuring out how can I offer something that is unique and that's different. And your mentorship was huge when it came to that because we would meet and you talk about like, dude, like there's this, even you just introducing me to different people and to different ideas of like the build and release. I had no idea what that was before we started working together, and you introduced me to this one guy who had this concept of a build and release. And like, dude, I think this model actually fits what you're trying to do very well. And it made sense. Like even what just working again, like working in like the corporate industry, there's so much that I figured out like I could take from my knowledge there. So even like building systems for team management and for execution and like different like the type of automations that can make things work. So what I figured is like, yo, I can just build rather than provide regular content agency services, like, oh, I'll just edit these clips for you and maybe even publish them for you. How can I build a system into your business that makes your podcast run on autopilot ultimately? So that's whether it's like talent, so bringing in a social media manager, a video editor, training them myself because I know what it takes to be successful on that end. So training them myself or with my team to make sure that they're being able to execute properly for you, putting in the systems that the talent can work within, so the systems that would work between you and the talent, and literally like just figuring out deliverables that make sense. What can I offer that makes my value, or that makes my offer, that makes my product more valuable? And so it's a constant refinement, like journey. You're always figuring it out, and maybe you have one thing that you then take out because you feel like maybe it's not that valuable. And but that's the thing, you have to try to, I think that's the thing, is like instead of trying to limit what you can do to fit a certain price point, I think like flip the mindset of how can I create the most value possible and then increase the price tag on it. And because there's going to be people out there that want it. And so rather than like, I think a lot of people are stuck in that like 1500 mindset, maybe like recurring 1500 or whatever it may be, but you can probably just add a few more services, develop, take a couple more months to develop something a little bit stronger, and then charge 10K for it, charge 5K, or charge something more. And that's been my journey overall. So now, yeah, like I said, I'm offering just an overall podcast infrastructure. So that's the talent that comes into your business to execute the podcast, like production, distribution, and then putting in the systems there. And then where I come in, and within the service is the consulting, so like the done with you sides of it, and like guiding through that process, because obviously they can have like the infrastructure in there for them, but and our idea is like after a few months to be able to, they can let it run on its own, but we need to guide them to be able to get to that point. And so yeah, it's a combination of like done for you stuff, which I had to do in the beginning by itself just to be able to get me to this point, done with you, which is like just consulting, and then some things that are like do it yourself. Like I can't record your podcast for you. You got to record it, but I can tell you how to properly plan it so you can get the most hooks out of it, so you can get the most social clips, to which then your team can go clip that stuff out and have videos that go viral. Like I can do that. But so it's a combination of done for you, done with you, done like DIY, done do it yourself, that if you put it together, it actually creates a very valuable like model and product.
Nice, man. Yeah, that's a huge lesson for anyone like watching and listening. This is like, as the creator economy kind of grows and matures, like it is naturally going to get harder for people to differentiate yourself. The way you differentiate yourself is quite simple. You just ask the question, how do I get better at this? How do I make this into a more valuable product to my ideal dream future client? What is it they're looking for? How do I make their lives easier? How do I add elements that are kind of like the done for you elements mixed with the done with you or do it yourself? So yeah, this is, me and you on the same wavelength of this, which is, the best approach is I'll do whatever it takes approach. And it's like a hybrid of, and this is why I don't like the idea of just saying I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, I'm a freelancer, I'm an agency kind of like owner. It's like, no, I have someone who I can help. Like, what do they need to get them the perfect results, like the dream outcomes? What the fuck do they need? And then you reverse engineer. You'd be like, how do I do it? How do I do it all?
Yeah.
Like, what do I need to do? And the answer is that's going to take some time. It's going to take time to figure out. It's not going to happen overnight. For you though, like 4 months ago, you were working a full-time job, and now you're like, you're not. You're selling a high ticket, sophisticated offer. But I think the one thing I do want to get through to people is that, like, you can't miss out the like 3-4 years of skills and knowledge that you've been like just mopping up over the years that got you to that point. I can relate to it. It's like there is like the 2-3 years of just eating shit, not seeing the vision, but you just having to have faith that, like, if you just keep taking it day by day, eventually the picture will come together. And I feel like the picture's coming together for you pretty nicely now, right?
Yeah, it's definitely starting to, and again, like, it's a journey, right? So I think that if you would have told me 4 months ago I'd be this far where I'm at right now, I would have thought, I was like, yo, that'd be like awesome. I'd be, yeah, like, hell yeah, let's go. Like, if you told me everything that I have right now, like how sophisticated my offer has gotten in like your words, but ultimately, like, what I've been able to build and what I'm providing and the results for me to be able to, that I've been able to see, I think it's incredible. And I think it's great to zoom out and look at that sometimes. But when like zooming in, it's like, there are more things now that I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out. I need to, now that there are some developments here, what is the proper messaging with the offer and everything like that. But it was just, there's a lot of moments in that journey where you're like building up to where you are now and where you want to become, where you want to be and who you want to become, that you just, you don't know. Like you said, you have to eat shit. You have to just believe in the project, like that you're going to get there eventually and just keep working. Even if you're not seeing that result, what I feel like happens a lot on that journey is that you feel like you're failing 90% of the time, but then the 10% time that you do win, that gives you a boost for another 6 months. And then you might feel like shit for another 6 months, but then oh shit, you got a small little win or a big win, and that'll keep you going. And then when these wins start to stack up, they start to become something pretty big. And so that's what it's like. That's what it's been like for me. I remember when I closed my first consulting client, and then at the time I'm like, I'm just trying to build as much skills as possible. And he's like, yo, can you also do these edits for me? I'm like, yeah, just give me more money. Like, let's do it for sure. And those were wins for me. And then closing my first client with this new offer, big win for me. And it makes up for like the hard parts in between, but sometimes you can't see the end, the vision, and you just have to keep going. But now I would say that I'm at a place where I can definitely see where I'm going, and that makes it fun, and that allows me to kind of like expand the time horizon, and like you said before, take the pressure off. When you take the pressure off, it becomes a lot more fun, because the last thing you want to do is like almost create another job for yourself, and not only just like time wise, but mentally, like psychologically, where it's just like tough to keep going. So taking the pressure off by expanding the time horizon and like being able to see that clear vision has just been huge for me.
Hell yeah, man. Like, we've spoken about it a lot. Like, not just, just like working yourself to the ends of the earth and like making sure that you live a you got it. We got into entrepreneurship to like feed a lifestyle. Ultimately, we wanted to have freedom. So let's do that. Yeah, dude. Okay. So we've got to wrap up now. And I'd just like to say thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, man. Where do people have to go connect with you? You've got a school community.
Yes.
Tell us, man.
Absolutely. I mean, you find me on all socials at the Felipe Fontes. So I'll make it easy for you anywhere, X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all the same handle, the Felipe Fontes. And then, yeah, I have a community for podcasters, the Podcast Club, which we just talk about scaling your audience through podcasting. I've actually been going hard on it the past week and a half. It's been like my focus point because I realize how important it is as just getting people at the top of the funnel that can eventually be a higher ticket customer for you. So the Podcast Club is great there. And then I've also launched the kind of like upgraded version of that community, which is called Podcast to Profit. And that's something I still need to update you on, but that's something that I'm doing now. And I've just found kind of that there are people that are completely in between. They're not necessarily beginners with podcasts, but they're also not ready to onboard a team that we would be willing to do for them if they were to pay us for it. And they just kind of want the weekly, the community and the consulting. So like building that as well. So that's Podcast to Profit, but you can find both of those. I mean, yeah, just those are my LinkedIn bios and stuff like that. So just go find that. But yeah, that's ultimately where to find me.
Sick, man. Hey, look, dude, it's been an absolute pleasure. We clearly have some catching up to do. But yeah, man, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. And no doubt this is not going to be the only time we hang on this channel. So yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. And absolutely. I'm going to hop off now because I've got another call with another student, but we'll catch up, dude.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been fun.
Ciao, bro. Right, champs, that was absolutely sick. So if you want to do exactly what both myself and Felipe have done, go check out this video in that corner or that corner. And it's going to show you exactly how to use the blueprint that we've used to build our businesses. See you in the next one.